Hi, it's Pat Gillis here, and every now and again I'll hear about someone who's been taking riding lessons for a little while on experienced horses like this, and they make the decision to buy a young horse because they really want to start a horse themselves and, you know, kind of start with that clean slate. You know, and I've had a lot of people get mad at me over the years about this, but it's really not a great idea, if you don't mind me saying. Like, I think what ends up happening is that a lot of times when we ride horses like this a lot, like Dex is in his 20s now, and no matter how poorly you ask him to do something, he'll do his best to translate that and to do it for you. And that's just kind of like, these horses are worth, you know, their weight in gold, these kind of horses, because he's so generous of spirit. If you have a younger horse that has no idea what you're talking about, the reaction you get to your requests for things is going to be really different on a young horse. And if you don't have that experience, you might be in for a little bit of a surprise. You know, one of the other things is a lot of times people start young horses at, you know, 3 or, well, sometimes 2, but, you know, they start young horses pretty young. And when a horse is between 2.5, 3.5 years old, the dental changes that are going on in the horse's mouth, like he's going to have, his molars are coming in, his milk teeth are going, he's getting his incisors in. There's so much going on in a horse's mouth. And then we add to this that we're going to slide a piece of metal in the horse's mouth. Again, if you only ride horses that are experienced like this horse, you can come to believe that horses fell out of their mother, understanding that when you squeeze with your leg or whatever, you nudge with your leg, the horse goes forward, and that they know what to do when you put metal in their mouth. It's not so, right? And even the smallest things like putting a bridle on for the first time can be a problem. Like, I'm going to just show you what I've seen a few times over the years. So we'll just get our old man decorated here. So we'll see if we can do it. I'm going to be really transparent. I have a little bit of trouble with this arm, and so sometimes I can make simple tasks look harder. So if I look a little stuck, that's all it is. So what will happen sometimes is that if you're putting a bit in the horse's mouth for the first time, the horse may very well have no idea even that he's supposed to open his mouth, right? Like if it's a young horse. So I've seen people take the bit and bash it on the horse's teeth in order to get the horse to open his mouth. There's no point to sort of make a young horse, or any horse, but a young horse particularly, think that the bit is going to be a terrible thing to have in his mouth. You know, the horse has no teeth here, so you're quite safe to stick your finger in a horse's mouth here, because the teeth are all either at the front or all the way up here, and a horse will always open their mouth when you stick your finger in there. So that's a nice way to get the horse to open his mouth. Bashing it on his teeth is not a good way. So when I put the bridle on the horse, I'm just going to put everything in my right hand, so this hand is free now, and then I'm just going to lift this up. So this is sometimes where my arm gets stuck, and I'm just going to put my thumb in there. Good boy. And then we just bring it over. And I just try to push the ears through this way. Right? Nice and comfy for him. Okay, so once that's in his mouth, and let's say now that I'm at the point where I'm going to take the bit of the bridle off the horse. Again, I've seen people do this, right? They'll just pull it off and sort of bash it off the horse's teeth coming out of his mouth. Again, there's no need to make a horse find this uncomfortable or unpleasant, right? So what we do here is we would always sort of slide it over the horse's ears, and then I'm just going to wait for a second, let him give it to me. You know, it only takes a second, he spits it out, everybody's happy, and I don't end up bashing it on his mouth. The other thing too is that in the winter time, what we'll do is sometimes we'll, if the bridle's been stored somewhere where it's really cold, we'll warm the bit up with our hands, because I don't want to put cold metal in the horse's mouth either. There's just so many small things that you can do for a horse that make the learning experience simpler, and it makes even an experienced horse's life better, right? There's no need to be rough or to do things that maybe scare the horse when you're first starting. And in case you're wondering why I'm going on and on about this, is because every time you deal with a horse, he's learning something. He's either learning something good or he's learning something bad. And so if you end up with a horse that maybe, let's just say for example, learns to buck when you first put a saddle on him. You know, we try to avoid that. We really try hard to avoid that, because we don't want the horse to ever feel a need to do that. But once a horse has learned that, or any kind of a bad habit, his chances of finding a good home go down exponentially. You know, the horse that has good manners, and understands what's asked of him will always survive better, will always have a better home. And you know, if you're on Facebook or whatever, you'll see all these horror stories of horses being sold on and being, you know, found in kill pens and stuff like that. Those are almost always the horses that have had behavioral problems, and behavioral problems in horses comes from training. Almost always. Like maybe 1% of one horse out of 1,000 is born as a little bit of a rogue, and I'm probably being unkind to even say one out of 1,000. Horses are so generous and kind, and if we treat them well and explain to them what we want in a way that doesn't frighten them, especially the first time, you'll find that you have a great partner for the rest of your life. So I recommend, if you're going to start training horses, keep a certain humility about it, recognize that there's still lots to learn, and maybe spend a little bit more time learning with the old guys, and then when you feel you know more than the horses like this, then you can start your young horse. Okay? So that's it for this week. If you're watching this anywhere besides at our blog, which is at ismyhorsehappy.com, go on over there, scroll down, leave us a message, and in the meantime, have a great week, and remember to thank your horse.